see.
Good morning.
It looks kind of crowded. You guys want to kind of spread out a little bit? You okay? Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Michael Seelbach, and I'm the Vice President for Public Policy and Communications for the American Lung Association of the Northeast. Thank you, Chairwoman Arroyo and members of the committee for this important hearing. The American Lung Association is very concerned that we don't know what's in e-cigarettes or what the health consequences of them might be. The Lung Association is troubled that they may be starting kids on the path of a lifetime nicotine addiction. And in addition to the local laws discussed here, we're calling on the Obama administration to take action. E-cigarettes are often available in flavors that may appeal to children and teens, including cotton candy, bubblegum, chocolate, strawberry, and mint. Additionally, the e-cigarette industry is using Big Tobacco's playbook when it comes to marketing their products. We see ads making their products appear sexy and cool. We see ads telling smokers to revolt against being pushed outside and urging them to use e-cigarettes indoors. We see celebrity endorsers, implied health claims, discounting, and couponing. Recent data, as you heard from the CDC, shows youth usage has doubled in the last year, and of those youth, 76% of those kids are also using tobacco as well. As you've heard, the FDA did an initial study and found toxic levels of cancer-causing chemicals. We've seen the initial studies that show there's formaldehyde, benzene, and carcinogens in secondhand e-cigarette emissions. You've heard a lot from vocal advocates of e-cigarette use today, but let's be clear on a few things. One, the FDA has not approved e-cigarettes as a safe or effective method to help smokers quit. There are 7 therapies approved by the U.S. FDA in combination with counseling that are the most effective ways to help smokers quit. Until and unless the FDA approves a specific e-cigarette for use as a tobacco cessation aid, the Lung Association does not support any direct or implied claims that e-cigarettes help smokers quit. 2, this legislation will not prohibit New Yorkers from using this product. It will simply replicate our existing smoke-free law and ask them to use the product in places where traditional smoking is permitted. 3, none of the health claims, direct or implied, that you defer today have been verified by the FDA, the CDC, or any other federal health agency. You've heard today about the users using advanced technologies, but we know that more and more we're seeing all kinds of these products, whether they're e-cigarettes, e-hookahs, e-cigars, or blue, red, or any other color. They're increasing in use, and we don't know what's in them. We've heard some arguments of the health of these products, that it's just water vapor or that it dissipates in the air. Blue is owned by Lorillard. They were out there saying that we should look at their Lorillard studies. Well, the Lung Association has gone toe-to-toe for decades against big tobacco in that industry. I hope that this council will once again choose to protect public health and listen to those that understand that these products have not been proven safe. You're well within your right to regulate them and to permit their use where traditional smoking is permitted. Thanks.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chairwoman Arroyo and members of the Health Committee, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sheila Feinberg, and I'm the Executive Director of the New York City Coalition for a Smoke-Free City. We are grateful to have you all and the City Council, to have a Health Commissioner and a Mayor who have demonstrated unprecedented commitment to public health, to improving public health. Earlier this year, the Coalition celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the Smoke-Free Air Act, and we couldn't have been more proud. New York City was considered a public health pioneer when we made our bars and restaurants smoke-free, and again so when we expanded the Smoke-Free Air Act to include hospital entryways, parks, beaches, and pedestrian plazas. However, with the emergence of e-cigarettes, our success may be compromised. In fact, youth use of e-cigarettes doubled last year, and we are concerned that this unregulated product, and I just want to stress that again, unregulated product, will serve as a nicotine starter kit for a new generation of smokers. Adding e-cigarettes to the Smoke-Free Air Act is both welcomed and necessary. The driving force for the original legislation was strong science and research, showing that secondhand smoke from combustible cigarettes is harmful. Research suggests the vapor emitted from e-cigarettes is not free of carcinogens. Beyond the uncertainty about the safety of exposure to the vapor, restaurant patrons and workers should not have to worry about determining whether a person is using an e-cigarette or a traditional cigarette when they're serving customers. E-cigarettes are designed to mimic the look and feel of real cigarettes. And allowing e-cigarettes in in areas where smoking is prohibited would not only complicate enforcement of the Smoke-Free Air Act, but it would also mean that smoking would be seen in places where it hasn't been allowed for years. And simply put, when a kid uses a public library, because let's remember what the Smoke-Free Air Act also includes, which is libraries, public institutions. When a kid goes to use the library, they should get a lesson in reading, not on how to smoke. And we're concerned about that possibility. New York City is not alone in the pursuit of limiting use of e-cigarettes to where smoking is permitted. New Jersey, Utah, South Dakota, and a number of other localities have done so. In closing, despite the great progress, tobacco use still causes hundreds of thousands of preventable deaths in the United States. We think here in New York City, we can continue to be a champion for public health. We think that the council can continue to be a leader and a pioneer in public health and to continue to reduce the ongoing negative effects of smoking.
Hi, my name is Kara Murphy. I'm from Global Advisors on Smoke-Free Policy. And I just wanted to say, coming in here, it was interesting. Being from New Jersey, where e-cigarettes are already included in the Smoke-Free Air Act, seeing e-cigarettes really was a shocker. And if we want to keep cigarettes from being normal for children, we need to include this as well. Concerns are growing on this unregulated, unknown danger. They target to children. As much as anyone can say they don't, with flavors, radio and TV ads, and celebrities' endorsements on social media, we need to make sure that this doesn't fall to our children. This is not a tobacco cessation device. It's been said that many people here have quit using tobacco cigarettes because of e-cigarettes. However, no study has shown its actual use in helping people quit. If they want to make it a tobacco cessation device, spend the money. Get the FDA support. However, no support's being taken and no action either. The goal is to get people off tobacco. It shouldn't be to get them on e-cigarettes.
Good afternoon. It is 12:20. My name is Karen Blumenfeld. I'm Executive Director of Global Advisors on Smoke-Free Policy. We are a nonprofit based in New Jersey, in existence since 1974, and our mission is to provide smoke-free air for non-smokers and actually to also help people to quit smoking, but to quit smoking using federally approved FDA smoking cessation products. As I sit here today, as Kara just mentioned, it's interesting that the word polite was mentioned, that in restaurants I've seen people be polite. I heard that testimony from the previous panelists. But even though that panelist mentioned that people are polite in restaurants, it's disturbing that those in this room don't deserve the same politeness back, that we here are exposed to e-cigarette vapors, even though others in restaurants may or may not be. For that reason alone, the Smoke-Free Air Act was passed in New York City. Why? Because people being polite didn't work when it came to tobacco products and smoking. Some people decided that they wanted to smoke regardless of whether or not it was going to harm an innocent bystander. I don't think that we need to repeat history again. There is enough data that shows that there are health concerns with regards to the vapor, with the liquid, when it combusts, etc. And we've provided our white paper that has numerous studies to this effect. There is no reason to wait on this measure. What I've heard today from the e-cigarette industry and supporters is old tobacco industry rhetoric. I've been doing tobacco-free work for over 25 years. So I was around in New Jersey and New York when all these laws were debated. And what did I hear? The same thing. Let's wait. Let's wait and see about more data. Let's wait for more time so that we can discuss this more fully through the council. In the 1940s and 50s, doctors who were paid by the tobacco industry told people it was good to smoke. Today we heard from ACSH. What ACSH didn't disclose is that in 2012 they received $25,000 from Altria. They didn't disclose that. We heard from an e-cigarette user about a Drexel study that was paid by CASA, C-A-S-A-A, which is an e-cigarette industry front group. So I think we have enough information to move forward to ban e-cigarette use in public places and workplaces. It doesn't matter what form, what shape, what smell, what size. We have enough information that will definitely demonstrate that perhaps in the near future or in the long term, that this will be hazardous. And as I sit here today, my throat and my nose passages are burning. I've been in this room many a time, and it's never happened. And that's the type, and that is the type of response that people who go to restaurants and in workplaces have to deal with. Remember, some of these products actually blow up. And for a workplace, something that blows up could create a fire, and that's also a concern. And I thank you very much for your time.
Okay.
Madam Chair, before you start the clock, I just wanted to take a moment to mention, you had asked some questions earlier about from other cities who have done this. We have a letter from the Boston Public Health Commission that we've submitted into evidence today to talk about how they did this 2 years ago, what the experience was like for them, and what their enforcement situation was like. We've got copies of it that are over there. But I just wanted to make you aware of that so that you all take a look at it. Thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty. I work for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. The one thing that's missing from this table right now in this big room is the Aflac duck. Because if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck and it sounds like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's a duck. Councilman Vallone, the reason you're so confused of vapor or smoke is because they make it that way. They want it to be that way. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. I have to, before I go to any kind of prepared remarks, talk a little bit about some of the things that has been said here. First off, the gentleman who were here just testifying a few minutes ago, looked and sounded like big tobacco more than anything I've seen in a long time. And just like they testified before Congress, we don't know that our product is addictive. You know, one of the gentlemen said there's no evidence of addiction or leading to smoking. 76% of the kids who are using e-cigarettes are using tobacco, or are using combustible cigarettes. We don't know which started first, but there's certainly evidence because 1 in 4 of those kids were never smokers when they tried e-cigarettes. So for him to say that is hard for me to believe in front of this body. They keep comparing themselves to cigarettes. Come on, let's find a better comparison, like Russian roulette. You have a 1 in 6 chance of dying if you play Russian roulette. It's 1 in 3 if you smoke cigarettes. Cigarettes are the most dangerous legal product out there. To say that you're safer than cigarettes is like saying you're safer than being in a car accident, because you've got like a 1 in 20 chance of surviving that. So let's be realistic here, and let's not try to make it seem like because these things are safer than cigarettes, that means they are safe. Clearly, there is no evidence to prove that they are safe at this point. And Mr. Shannon and Mr. Schwartz think that you shouldn't regulate these like traditional tobacco products. 46 attorneys general, including the Attorney General of New York, believe they are wrong, that these should be regulated like tobacco products across the board. And we stand with them on that. So one of the other testifiers today talked about how, you know, if it's just because vodka looks like water, we don't ban water, we educate them to tell them it's not. Well, I think it's important to talk about how the industry is educating consumers. They're basically, you know, they're saying, considering all this is compared to a 1970s ad. Considering all I'd heard, I'd either decided to quit or smoke true. I smoked true. Now it's why quit? Smoke to blue. And if you have any doubt at all about what they're really going for here, this is what they're going for. This is an e-cigarette ad for blue. Dear smoking ban. And they're flipping you off. And they're flipping off public health and every opportunity that we have to try to denormalize smoking and reduce smoking among youth and adults. So don't allow them to fool you that this is about quitting. Because as was pointed out earlier, people can still quit. This is not an individual health decision we're asking you to make today, or that this bill is asking you to make. Individual health decisions are between doctors and patients. We are talking about public health, people who are exposed to products, and if we renormalize this product, it will undo all the progress you've made over the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gennaro.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank this panel for being here today, and thank you for working working with the council and working with the Bloomberg administration, to get us here today. I want to pose a question to Ms. Blumenfeld with regard to New Jersey, because it's arguable that it's probably the case that New Jersey was the first state to regulate the e-cigarettes in the same way as tobacco. And I'd like you to speak to the experience that, Jersey has had, what led them to do that, and, what the experience has been in terms of health effects, business effects, or just, how's it going sort of like 3 years in or whatever it's been?
Okay, thank you. In one word, seamless. The transition from banning e-cigarettes happened in 2010. And since that time, the Department of Health has issued information to the health officers. There's been information disseminated to the public. Business owners received information as well. There was a lot of news also on it, so there is good information in New Jersey on this, and rarely, I think once since 2010, have I seen someone use an e-cigarette or electronic smoking device inside. So the transition from going smoke-free to smoke-free, including electronic smoking devices, was virtually seamless. There was no problem whatsoever. And in fact, business owners liked it because they didn't have to then mediate between patrons who wanted no e-cigarette use and patrons that may have wanted e-cigarette use. It alleviates that burden from the business owner so that everyone is on the same playing field with regards to that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Blumenfeld. And Mr. O'Flaherty, about your position about safer doesn't equal safe. That was a point that really hasn't been made so far, and I was glad that you made it. And you've been doing this a long time, so Jersey did it several years ago, and one of the things that I thought was important to do and to do soon, because the more these devices become prevalent, it will be just as we'll basically within a couple of years have the same fight we had back in 2002. And that's what I was sort of trying to avoid. I don't think there was a lot of hubbub when New Jersey did this, and we're doing it here, and now we have like a lot of hubbub. If we wait 5 years, there'll be a huge hubbub, and all kinds of consequences to trying to restore like the denormalization of smoking, vaping, whatever. What's your insight into that?
Well, I think you're exactly right. 3 years ago when New Jersey did it, there was no opposition. Really, it just sort of happened. And Boston did it 2 years ago to very little fanfare. But as a lot of folks have referenced, the use of this product is doubling every year. And with all fairness to Councilman Gentili, we think hookah is a problem too. But it's not rising. It's not rising as fast. It's not doubling as fast. It's not increasing. It's not growing by leaps and bounds. And it also, in terms of the duck analogy, it's substantively different and looks substantively different. Very dangerous. We're concerned about it. But this really, every year you wait on this, it will become a harder fight. And again, we're not talking about an individual health decision, whether this can help you quit. E-cigarettes can help you quit, perhaps. If they can help you quit now, they'll continue to be able to help you quit after you pass this law. And it'll just mean that the e-cigarette companies will have to stop marketing themselves as cigarette lookalikes, and they'll have to market themselves as something else. But if they're effective, they can still use them. They can still be effective in that way. It just won't undermine all the great work that you've done over the last 10 years.
Thank you. One of the points you made was regarding many state officials. I think you said there was many attorneys general that had some kind of consensus opinion. Could you give me a little information on that?
Yes, Councilman. A couple of months ago, 46 attorneys general from the United States wrote a letter to the FDA, basically talking about what a huge problem these are becoming in their states, and that they urge the FDA to regulate these things fully as tobacco products. And New York State's Attorney General was one of the signers to that letter.
Thank you. And I'm not going to revisit the whole thing about Mr. Kickless, because I think we did that already. I just want to thank you all for your great work that you've done, and I think you present a very logical perspective. And I guess one last question is with regard to the 17 to 20 million Americans that are living in jurisdictions where there is parity with regard to the regulation of these devices versus tobacco. What's the scorecard? Anyone wish to talk about that? Karen?
Yes, I can talk about that. We track all of the jurisdictions, whether they're local in the United States and internationally. And with regard to that, from North Dakota to Malta, e-cigarette use is banned. In particular, I think that what needs to be looked at here is actually what's happening in Europe right now. Internationally, the jurisdictions that
when you say banned, you mean they're
ban the sale, importation, or use of e-cigarettes. So there are countries that have done even more than just ban the use in public places because they are so concerned about the integrity and the efficacy and the health hazards of electronic smoking devices.
Has that happened in this country? You said
that has not happened in this country,
right.
But internationally, that has happened from Argentina, Singapore, Brazil, Israel, Panama, Jordan, Turkey, Hong Kong, and Canada have done either or all ban the sale, importation, or use of electronic smoking devices. That's how important this is. That's why we cannot wait.
Oh, so they can't use them at all, so they can't be sold, they can't be imported. It's an illegal product.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was not aware of that.
Councilmember Rolón.
Thank you. Many of those countries have also banned fluoride, and I'd love to get my chair on board.
Yeah.
Not this chair, the other one.
I'm pro-fluoride.
That toxic substance from our water supply.
Councilmember, if you will excuse me, I'm going to take a break for a second.
I have
if
the
you
next
can
panel.
handle the next panel.
Thank you. One quick question here. I can't discount the people I know personally and the people here who've used this to quit. But I assume what you're saying is that more people, especially teenagers, are starting smoking or using this as a bridge. So more people are starting smoking or continuing smoking than the people who are using this to quit. Anyone who wants to deal with that?
Well, it's complicated, as all these decisions really are, as all important decisions are. But what the evidence has shown is that there are more people out there that e-cigarettes actually inhibit their quitting attempts than people who the evidence shows that e-cigarettes actually help their quitting attempts. But when you're thinking about this, and I referenced this briefly, in terms of individual health versus public health, when you're making a decision like this, much like the FDA has to make when they decide how to allow new products to come to market and whether they qualify for what's called a modified risk product, they have to decide, one, what's good for the individual user. So does this actually help a person quit, and to what extent, et cetera? They decide that first. But then they have to ask themselves, based on how the product is marketed, does it discourage other adults who might quit from quitting? Does it encourage kids who never would have picked up a cigarette to pick up this product and perhaps start? And then does it undermine the effectiveness of the smoke-free law is a matter here. So all of those things need to come into play when you're making this decision, not just whether it helps one person quit or not.
You said 1 out of 4 high school kids who are using e-cigarettes did not smoke before?
In the CDC data, it showed that the use among youth had doubled over the last year from 2011 to 2012. Those are the last years that the data is available. It had doubled, and of those, 76% who had used e-cigarettes in the last 30 days had also used combustible cigarettes in the last 30 days. Using in the last 30 days for kids is the definition of whether you're a current user of that product. And out of all those e-cigarette users, 24% of them had never tried regular cigarettes, and they'd tried e-cigarettes. So there's got to be a bleed over. I can't tell you how many of that 76% started with e-cigs or started with cigarettes. They didn't ask that detail. I would imagine in coming years they will. But just given the high number of kids who started e-cigarettes without ever trying a traditional cigarette, there's definitely a bleed over there.
Okay.
I could just add one thing.
Just very quickly, because I want to get to...
Absolutely. There are recent studies coming out also about dual use, meaning that people who do use electronic smoking devices that may think it will help them quit are also continuing to use regular cigarettes. So there's a concern of the amount of nicotine. And, we are for helping people to quit smoking. It's just that when people do use products to quit smoking, those products shouldn't be imposed on those who don't want to be exposed to it.
And Councilman Malone, I'm asking you to indulge me just very briefly here, and I know it's important. One of the opponents said, if people are using less cigarettes, that's good for public health. That's not necessarily true. If you're a 2-pack-a-day smoker and you cut down to 1 pack a day because you're using e-cigarettes half the time, you have not cut your health risks anywhere near in half. Nicotine, you keep the heart risks, period. You lose some of the cancer risks, but what determines whether you live or die isn't how many cigarettes you smoke. It's how many years you have been a smoker at all. So reducing your use doesn't really save us money. It doesn't reduce the horrible, dreadful impacts of tobacco use. And I think it's important that the Council recognizes that.
Well, I think if you live next to that person, you probably disagree. But
Fair enough.
There are both two sides to that, but I understand.
Well, secondhand smoke, you're right. Those risks would go down.
So we are going to hear from 2 high school kids in the panel after the next one, and I want to thank you guys for coming in. Our chair is back, but since I have these, I might as well just call up the next panel. Andrew Ridgie from the New York Hospitality Alliance and the rock group Wham, apparently. Rob Bookman, also from the New York Hospitality Alliance, and Thomas Bryant from NATO. Okay. And the panel after this will be those high school students I spoke about, John Lastorza and Charles Mazzio. Gotcha. I'm Italian, too. I don't know.
All set? Thank you, Madam Chair, Council members. My name is Andrew Ridgie. I'm the Executive Director of the New York City Hospitality Alliance. We are a trade association that represents New York City's restaurants and nightlife establishments that would be impacted by this proposed ban on electronic cigarettes. Part of our job is to be on the pulse of the industry, and this past summer I started receiving some calls from some of our restaurant and nightlife operator members asking about how to deal with the situation if a customer or a actual employee begins using an electronic cigarette. And I actually wrote a blog on it, spoke with several dozen business owners from kind of large bar, nightclub type of establishments to quick service to fine dining restaurants. And it was pretty interesting to get an understanding from them how they are trying to manage, the growing popularity of electronic cigarettes. So after a lot of this discussion, we got into some of the different ways that they were, addressing this. The majority of people that we spoke with didn't even notice anyone smoking an electronic cigarette in the restaurant. Or if it was very isolated and they weren't seeing it that frequently. For those restaurants where it may have been, or more bars, nightclubs where it was a little bit more prevalent, there were different ways that they were monitoring. One, they were basing their considerations on how to regulate this within their establishment on several considerations. One of them is when people are smoking electronic cigarettes inside, it reduces the amount of people going outside on the front of the street that are smoking traditional cigarettes, which happens to reduce the noise complaints that those establishments sometimes receive from neighbors, which is obviously an important issue. Then other restaurants have just flat out banned them completely. And then others have found different unique ways in an isolated case. Maybe someone is smoking one by the bar, or perhaps an employee in an office is using them. So at this point, they really are managing it based on the situation, because while there is a growing popularity, at least from those business owners we've spoken with, it is not a proliferation. So furthermore, we do understand, especially based on the discussion here today, the FDA is looking into the regulation of the electronic cigarettes, as well as the scientific community is conducting more research. So we do feel that it's premature for the Council to pass this considered ban, but we do support your ongoing efforts to monitor the science of secondhand vapor effects. Thank you.
Hi, Rob Bookman, Counsel to the Hospitality Alliance and the New York City News Center Operators Association. Dr. Farley stated when it came to the science, we just don't know. And he also said the primary concern of the health department is enforcement. So let's talk about the businesses we represent. We're not here for big tobacco. We have nothing to do with the other side either. We're in the hospitality industry. We have no enforcement issues whatsoever. There is no problems that have been reported to us. For the most part, these are being used, as Andrew said, in bars and clubs. It is very easy for us to tell the difference between people smoking illegal cigarettes and people vaping. As a matter of fact, a common thing when a bartender or a server goes over just to make sure if it's one of those that looks alike is the people go like this to their face, showing that they're vaping. Many have blue tips. It is not a problem. To base a law, therefore, when your own health commissioner says, as far as the science for secondhand exposure, we just don't know, to base it on that he thinks it's a problem for enforcement, when the health department, I don't know the last time they issued a summons to anybody smoking indoors. Their policy is not to, as you recall. We are the enforcers of the Smoke-Free Air Act, and we do a great job, according to the health department, in enforcing it, and we have no problem whatsoever in allowing people to vape in our establishments and telling the difference between smoking and vaping. Councilman Gennaro, who I rarely disagree with, said, what's the big deal? What's all the hubbub? Well, Councilman, it is a big deal when local government wants to limit the use of a legal product without any scientific evidence that it is unsafe, in this case, unsafe to others. That is a big problem. The issue here is not, and you're hearing much too much testimony, on whether e-cigarettes are unhealthy for the user. The issue for this bill is it dangerous for other people in the room, me? And your own health commissioner has said he has no evidence to that effect. That was the basis for 10 years ago, throwing all the hundreds of thousands of smokers out onto the streets at night, which is, by the way, when we started to get complaints, and you started to, from your constituents, about late-night noise on the street outside bars. We're finally seeing a product that is keeping some of those smokers inside, where your constituents want them, where we want them, where maybe it's helping them quit, maybe it's not. But from our perspective, it's hospitable, it's putting less people on the street. Bars and clubs, they'll have no children there. We're all adults. There is no reason to ban the use of this lawful product for lawful adults, where lawful adults congregate, especially late at night. Passing this would lower the bar so dramatically for what government, the basis for what government could use to ban a lawful product, that I fear that the ultimate lawsuits, I'll just finish up, that these companies will bring if you rush this through and pass it, and in my opinion they will win, will really make it more difficult for the next council and the next administration to come up with reasonable regulations about maybe like we did with toy guns, make them orange or make them a color that doesn't look real, that there are many reasonable regulations that we can all work with and come up with together. But if you just pass this and pass this real quickly, they're going to go to court, they're going to win on the lack of science, and it may make it extremely difficult for you to then come back and regulate.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Thomas Bryant. I am the executive. My name is Thomas Bryant. I'm the executive director of the National Association of Tobacco Outlets, a national retail tobacco trade association with 28,000 member stores. The underlying basis for the adoption of the New York Smoke-Free Air Act in 1995 and the subsequent amendment of that law in 2002 to include workplaces was to protect against secondhand smoke. And scientific studies on secondhand smoke were relied upon by the council at those times to support passage of the smoking restrictions. However, as we've heard today, electronic cigarettes do not emit secondhand smoke. This means that the underlying scientific basis supporting the initial adoption and then the amendment of the Smoke-Free Air Act, namely the concerns of secondhand smoke, is not present with electronic cigarettes. So if this committee follows the precedent set by the New York City Council in 1995 and again in 2002 in relying on scientific studies, then e-cigarettes should not be included in the Smoke-Free Air Act at this time because a scientific body of scientific research has not yet been compiled to support restrictions on the use of e-cigarettes. And it will be important to wait for this reason. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has now undertaken a comprehensive two-step regulatory framework to regulate e-cigarettes. The first step is the FDA's new regulations that are being proposed and are currently under review by the White House Office of Management and Budget. Once approved by the OMB, the FDA will issue the proposed rules for public comment and then final adoption. These proposed rules are a serious first step in regulating electronic cigarettes nationwide. The second step. The FDA just announced a new partnership with the National Institutes of Health to generate scientific research on tobacco products by creating 14 tobacco centers for regulatory science. They're going to fund it this first year with $53 million of user fees that the FDA has collected, and then fund it with a potential of up to $273 million more for research over the next 5 years. As Mitch Zeller, the director of the FDA's Center for Tobacco Products, recently explained, scientific evidence is necessary to support regulatory actions on tobacco products. And these research centers are being created to compile that body of evidence. With the FDA now proceeding on this two-step regulatory process involving e-cigarettes, the consideration of the proposed amendment to include electronic cigarettes in the Smoke-Free Air Act is premature. Sound public policy should be based on scientific data and factual information, and not on unsubstantiated claims. For this reason, I urge the Committee on Health to seriously consider following the process utilized by the Council in the past and wait until the necessary scientific research and factual evidence is compiled before proceeding. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. You, sir, unfortunately do sound like big tobacco, and the way they sounded in '95 when my father passed the original law, and every time we've expanded it since. We don't know enough yet. The Health Commissioner admitted that. Said we don't know enough. He can't guarantee one way or the other. But he did say, as the Hospitality Alliance pointed out, that the reason he's doing this, or wants to do this, in supporting Chair Gennaro's bill, is because it hurts enforcement efforts of the anti-smoke of the smoking ban we have in place, which is a very legitimate concern. But that's why I was very interested to hear that about the enforcement efforts. In fact, an owner doorman of one of his clubs contacted me on Facebook and said he was very opposed to the original smoking bill because he had people had to come in and out of the restaurant, of the bar, and stand outside and come in, and it was a problem at the door. He said, but now it works. It's much better for his place to be smoke-free, and he supports it even though he didn't originally. But he said to force people to go outside to smoke e-cigarettes, he said would be crazy for his business because you don't get the same benefit inside. The place doesn't smell like smoke. Right. And to have that much door traffic coming in and out, he thought it would be harmful. I'm not sure if you were aware of that argument from your own people, but it's an interesting one.
We are aware of it, and like I said, we finally have found a product that is keeping people inside, that's not harming anybody. It tends to be, from our anecdotal evidence, smokers. But when they're going out at night now, they're bringing their e-cigarettes with them. Maybe they're trying to stop, maybe they're not. Maybe they're just using it the nights they go out. But from our perspective, that's a positive. There are less people coming and going. It reduces security concerns. Every time, especially in the winter, somebody goes out, we have to search them again because of coats. They bring their coat outside. They got to be researched before they come in. The Smoke-Free Air Act did increase our costs of operation. This is helping a little bit, moving it in the right direction. So there's less people going in and out. I think it's a great thing that if every smoker who goes out at night brings an e-cigarette with them and stays indoors all night, it's good for our business, and it's good for your constituents because there's not people out on the street 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, talk to each other, talking on their cell phones. I think it's a win-win. So I think the enforcement argument, given that the bars and the clubs of the city are the enforcement agents, and the health department has publicly said we do a great job in enforcing it. As the enforcement agents, we're telling you that argument is a red herring. We can enforce against the Smoke-Free Air Act and allow people to use e-cigarettes at the same time. We're doing it. We have no problem.
I need to leave, but I keep learning so much from each panel. It's
we have about 15 more panels.
That's not going to happen for me, at least. My condolences to you as chair. When a public safety hearing does that, I have to stay. Now you have to stay. But I have been here a long time. I'm going to try to stay a little bit longer, but thank you for your testimony. I look forward to our youngsters who are coming up next.
Councilmember Gennaro?
Thank you. Thank you. And leave it to Rob Bookman to come up with very reasonable, rational considerations. And I've really enjoyed working with you over the years on many issues. And normally we're on the same side. And I can see that this has an impact on your industry by everything that you just said. But we have to take a larger view than just the hospitality industry. And while the commissioner did make the argument in his testimony regarding the confusion, he did make many other points in his testimony, and I tend to agree with him, and I sympathize with what your industry is going to face and the calls that the next council member is going to get from people standing outside of establishments. That's just reality, and I know it's going to happen. I'm not happy about it, but and I'm just, for me, if I can get this done, I'm just not willing to wait for big tobacco to completely take over the e-cigarette industry, and then you're going to get nothing out of Washington because Washington is bought and paid for. People are addicted to tobacco, but Washington is addicted to tobacco money. It's just reality. And with regard to the comments that we've heard, regarding kids and their exposure, they have some sense that this may be a safer way to smoke and get like a little bit of a nicotine rush. And so and all the jurors, and then you mentioned about the lawsuits, just like we haven't seen those manifest in the many states and jurisdictions. Like I said, there are 70 to 20 million people in this country that are living in jurisdictions where there's parity between these two kinds of devices. So I give you guys A for effort. I agree with you on what you're going to face. I just don't agree with you today on this, but I still love you.
Ditto. I just want to say this may be the last time I am testifying in front of Councilman Gennaro and Councilman Vallone.
And not me.
Not you. And it has been really a privilege over the years to work with both of you when we've agreed and disagreed. You are two tremendous public servants, and I know people we represent, and I'm sure this institution, are going to miss you greatly.
Thank you.
Okay, no buttering up the members.
So you agree with me now? No.
Thank you so much for your time. John and Charles, come on up. The next panel, we're going to hear from Jeff Steyer, Audrey Silk, Daniel Karpus, Ashley Soisting. What is that? Soisting. Be prepared. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I don't know if you've done this before, though you somehow look familiar. Yeah, that's what I thought. You look familiar. Okay, so you know how it's done. Okay, so the third person on the panel I didn't call, so I'm sorry? No. The panel after them. I'm sorry. Okay. Just be ready for when they're done. That was the point. Thank you. All right.
Well, hello. My name is Charles Mazzio. As explained, I'm from Reality Check. We're anti-tobacco and all that. But here I'm today to speak about the Indoor Air Act. So I remember the whole raise hands game and how incredibly biased that was. So everyone under the age of 20, please raise your hand. Oh. I did. Okay. So clearly it doesn't matter who quit over that age because we're here to talk about the youth, okay? So another thing, raise your hand if you quit because of e-cigarettes, please. Yeah, you all just lied to me because you're still using e-cigarettes, which is smoking. Okay, vapor, great. Okay, it's nicotine, you're addicted. You didn't quit. The word quit means you stopped. You're still doing it. So another thing I wanted to talk about was the whole point of the Indoor Air Act. You're all saying, oh, it's going to make people start smoking again if we can't use our e-cigarettes inside. Clearly, you're not a very loyal customer if it's going to make you stop using it just because you have to take a few steps outside, because, I mean, it's not a big deal.
So overall, it's not healthy. Okay, so like sitting here today, I've gotten so much smoke blown in my face in like 5 minutes. And it smelled pretty gross, I'm not gonna lie. So that doesn't sound like a clean air that I'm sitting here breathing in. My mother and father have smoked for a very long time, and they switched to e-cigarettes for a little bit. Didn't work, and it increased their addiction, so now they smoke nearly double the amount of cigarettes that they used to smoke. So good job, e-cigarettes. Really, they serve no purpose indoors, like you're complaining about how, or maybe some of you want to quit smoking, okay? The fact that you all need to sit here and continue to smoke throughout this entire thing, even in the faces of the people who are trying to ask a question, like not to pass a law, is pretty rude, okay? So I think you can wait. Everyone who's a real smoker, which you're claiming has more nicotine and is more addictive, is waiting to go outside and smoke real cigarettes, and you can't wait when it has less. Clearly the e-cigarettes aren't doing their job. So, I mean, there's always that. And so if a child starts smoking, that's what I'm here really to talk on behalf of. If a child starts with the e-cigarette, which it absolutely happens, none of you can tell me it hasn't. I go to high school, you don't. So I see it. It happens all the time. And I also know lots of high schoolers who do smoke, and they smoke both. I see this. I walk out of school, I see people in a group. Some of them smoking real cigarettes, some of them smoking e-cigarettes. Same stuff, same poison, different name. Are they smoking? Are they vaping? I don't care. You're getting poison. It's not good for you. You don't smoke an e-cigarette and get healthier from it, okay? You're addicted. That's all it is. It's bad for you. A cigarette, I completely agree with the whole, they sound like tobacco companies claim, because I've seen it tons of times, okay? I've spoken to big tobacco company CEOs, okay? They sound exactly the same. There is no difference. They are selling you poison. Okay, we're not even telling you to stop selling them. We're just telling you not to do it inside. It's not hard. And that is all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to be consistent. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm John. I'm John Lasorsa. I'm from Reality Check as well. And I want to say it again because a woman said it before. My nose and throat burns from the e-cigarette. Anyone laughing this time? Okay. Because I'm a kid.
Talk to us.
I'm a kid, and I have an extreme headache right now because I've been sitting behind them smoking e-cigarettes the whole time. And I'm sorry, I know how we're talking about being nice in a restaurant and smoking it and it smells, but can you be nice in here? I'm trying to listen to everybody talk and give their opinion. I had a thing I was going to say. But now I want to say that throughout the testimonies, there really haven't been many talks about the use in schools. Charles just brought it up. I think in schools, we've really, really seen it. I see kids in classes just smoking it, and it's ridiculous. Teachers can't yell at them. Well, teachers can yell at them, but they won't really listen. If they're in the hallway, there are tons of them smoking them. And you can't yell at every kid because we have over 1,000 kids in our school. I think that it glamorizes it too because we have incoming freshmen who are, 13, 14. And they're looking at these kids. Look how cool these kids are. They're smoking a cigarette in school, not getting in trouble. So they go out, ask their friend to buy them, and they have one. And then they smoke it. And then it can trail all the way down to middle school because if the kid has an older brother who's a freshman and just started smoking an e-cigarette, why can't I smoke an e-cigarette? My brother's smoking it. It looks cool. I can do it inside. I can't get yelled at. And it's good for me. That's what we're telling them in the commercials, right? It's good for them. It's not. If you smoke an e-cigarette, I can guarantee you're probably going to want to smoke a real cigarette, at our age at least. You guys might not want to, but at our age, you're smoking a cigarette and you go, wait, that guy's smoking a cigarette, I smoke an e-cigarette. They look exactly alike, why can't I do it? And then you do it. Also, I want to bring up the flavors that they're doing. Why do adults want a chocolate flavored thing? You can't have a cigarette flavored if you're trying to get away from cigarettes? Also, I want to bring up someone before said, my cigarette looks and feels like a cigarette. Why do you want to have a cigarette in your hand if you're trying to kick cigarettes? I'm not done. I'll keep talking. When will we start to protect our youth? We're trying to protect them so they can smoke inside. Why don't we protect us? I'm done. I'm done.
Thank you. You don't have to use the whole 3 minutes, by the way.
I wanted to.
Councilmember Vallone.
Like I wanted to.
Yeah. First of all, you guys are awesome. I do.
We like you too.
I'm a little older than you. I like chocolate. So adults do chocolate. Bubble gum, I would draw the line there.
Unless you grew out some pigtails, I mean. Yeah.
But you said something interesting. What school do you go to where they allow e-cigarettes
We
in the
both go
hallways?
to Tottenville High
It's
School.
not that they allow it.
And, well, they don't exactly allow it. In any public school, you can allow things all you want, and unless there's a solid law against it, like there's no kid who would dare to smoke inside, okay? Like as bad as a kid in high school would be, they won't even do that. But if they view e-cigarettes as something as not a cigarette, even though it has cigarette in the name, it's not that E helps you quit cigarettes, it's the e-cigarette, okay? So if it's viewed as bad as that, then hopefully it will stop in the schools, at least like depleting how much of it's going on outside.
Oh, but you said you've seen it in the hallways at school.
I have nothing against high school. I love my school.
What school is it?
Tottenville High School.
In Staten Island.
In Staten Island.
That's a public high school.
Yep.
Because the DOE, they don't have to wait for us to act. They can ban these things the way they've banned cell phones, and which I don't agree with, and from schools without waiting on us. Yeah.
Kids still use cell phones, though.
Yeah.
We still use cell phones in
Well,
school.
I wouldn't let my little daughters go without a cell phone. But I don't want them used in class, but to and from school is a different story. We'll have a hearing on that, but we had a few. But you are saying that they are allowing e-cigarettes in the hallways of public school?
They're not allowing it, but they can't necessarily stop it. We have a school of over, 5,000?
Oh, I don't agree with that. They could stop it. If I were in charge, I'd be
There's
able
a
to stop
difference
it.
between a school rule and a law. I can use my phone outside of school, and I can use it in school because it's a rule. If it was a law that I couldn't use my cell phone, I can guarantee you I'm not using my cell phone.
Good point. What is Reality Check, by the way?
It's a youth-led group. Youth-led group. One second. I have it right here. A youth-led group that educates the community and other youth about tobacco marketing.
That's great. As I'm term limited out, I'm heartened to know that there are people like you ready to take our places. So thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
I'd like to note that Councilmember Williams is hanging in the shadows in the back. Thank you for being here. No longer a secret, and he's not smoking. John, Charles, thank you so much. I recognize both of you from previous hearings. I thank you for your continued advocacy. Regardless of what side of the issue you're on, it's important to have your voice heard here. So thank you so much for taking the time, and don't stop.
Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Thank you. Our next panel, we have Jeff.
Ouch.
Jeff?
Dyer.
It's okay. You'll do it on the record. I just want to... Audrey? Okay. Daniel? Or Daniel? And Ashley. And you'll state your name for the record when you begin your testimony. On deck, we will have Michael Hernandez, Patrick Norberto, Phil Koningsberg, and Danielle Johnson. You're up next. When the light is on, the mic is working. Pull it close to you. You've done this before, so. Okay. You know how to do this, right? Thank you for being here. Begin when you're ready.
I'm Jeff Steyer. I'm a senior fellow at the National Center for Public Policy Research, and I'm going to do my best to come in under 3 minutes. I appreciate all your patience. I'm disappointed, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that the primary sponsor of the bill and Dr. Farley are not here. Is that correct?
Dr. Farley's not here, but Department of Health staff is taking copious notes, and that's the practice.
I understand that. I think it's unfortunate.
I don't like it either, but it is.
That this is something that they see as so urgent, that this hearing had to be announced so quickly, and that they're trying to pass the bill this year. We keep hearing that, well, we don't really know all of the facts, so this is the prudent thing to do. I would caution members, especially those of you that are leaving the council, I would caution you that this is not the prudent thing to do. The prudent thing here to do is to help cigarette smokers quit. You've heard all the data, you've heard all the conversations. But rushing to judgment here could have very dangerous, unintended consequences that you need to be aware of. It will stop people from quitting smoking. E-cigarettes are not a gateway to smoking. The data does not show that. E-cigarettes are a gateway to quitting smoking. And by passing this legislation, especially so quickly without having evaluated the science, could actually undermine the very public health goals that I think we all share. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, because I'm going to go 4 minutes. I'm warning.
No, you're not.
Commissioner Farley got to speak for 20 minutes. 1 extra minute.
Let's not debate how we're handling this, because you're going to... Don't take me there.
My name is Audrey Silk, and I'm the founder of New York City Citizens Lobbying Against Smoker Harassment. I quote from the New York City Human Rights Law, Administrative Code of the City of New York, Title 8. Policy. In the City of New York, with its great cosmopolitan population, there is no greater danger to the health, morals, safety, and welfare of the city and its inhabitants than the existence of groups prejudiced against one another and antagonistic to each other because of their actual or perceived differences, smoker, non-smoker. The Council hereby finds and declares that prejudice, intolerance, bigotry, and discrimination and disorder occasioned thereby threaten the rights and proper privileges of its inhabitants and menace the institutions and foundation of a free democratic state. Excerpts from the notice of this hearing that one of the greatest achievements of the smoking ban was to end smoking. Smoking, curb smoking, nicotine sends wrong message, allowing smokers, Dr. Farley's predecessor, Thomas Frieden, on his fact sheet in Department of Health. It's online today. Question. This is America. Don't citizens have a right to smoke even if it hurts them? Answer. Yes, smokers are free to continue to smoke. Behavior that, while acceptable if it affects the individual only. So which is it? But for the gratuitous addition at the very end of your notice on e-cig exposure, it's clear by going after harmless vapor, your entire aim is, and may I say has been, that smokers are not free to continue to smoke and it's not acceptable. That you are intolerant of it, and if you're not on the approved protected list, this will not be a free democratic state. The children. Adults have rights too. Hiding behind for the children, you seek to conscript me against my will into the war on smoking army to carry your message. If smoking a cigarette sends a message, your words, then we are talking about my freedom of speech. Can I stand on a street corner and give a speech about my belief that it's normal to smoke? I think you'd say yes. Then according to you, how is my smoking a lit cigarette or somebody using an e-cig any different from speech that when expressed another way, you would call protected? When it comes to the issue of smoking, you are everything you despise. You are the bullies you have zero tolerance for with your intolerance of a legal lifestyle that doesn't fit yours. You are the stop and friskers of the health police. As a New York City police officer for 20 years, I had more authority than either one of you. I could have walked into this chamber and for reasons that I decided, arrested you, cuffed you, taken you to processing. The DA's office may have told me later, let them go, and I might be disciplined by my supervisor, but I had the authority to do that. But I didn't. But that is what you are now hypocritically doing. Your version of stop and frisk, whereby you have opted to use your authority to violate someone's civil liberties because you have deemed the legal behavior wrong. Same as you accuse the NYPD of violating many who have been stopped and frisked because the cop felt it best and had the authority to do it.
Audrey, wrap up.
I find that very unfair.
It's been consistent, so let's not do that. Okay, next.
Okay, hi, my name is Ashley Sektig, and I'd like to quickly address the concern about the flavors appealing to children. Are adults not allowed to like candy? I mean, that is part of the appeal for e-cigarettes to switch from cigarettes to e-cigarettes, is that they have an appealing taste. And that's something that, it's part of the cessation with it. But either way, what about flavored alcohols? Does that mean that they're also appealing to children? That's a spurious argument that I don't understand why that's even being taken into consideration with this bill. Also, I'd like to address the CDC, which has reported that the usage rose in the last month from 1.5% to 2.8% for electronic cigarette usage. I'm not sure where the higher percentage that we heard earlier came from, but that is from the CDC website report. The CDC also happened to report that the past usage tobacco consumption fell from 15.8% to 14%. So if e-cigarette usage allegedly increases tobacco cigarette, I'm not sure why that wasn't reflected in recent data. But again, just going to the FDA study, I'd like to focus on the ingredient that they allegedly found that's an antifreeze, which is diethylene glycol. They did find that, but the details of this study reveal that only 18 cartridges from 2 companies were tested, and out of these 18, only 1 tested positive for about 1% diethylene glycol. And no other independent lab study has been able to replicate these findings, which is pretty important for any scientific data to be taken seriously. And given this information, it's reasonable to suspect that the single sample was contaminated in another way, but it's certainly under no circumstances could it be considered a standard ingredient in electronic cigarettes. And also, in regards to somebody who pointed out the Drexel University School of Public Health being the research from that being funded by CASA, that's true, which is an e-cigarette proponent or anti-tobacco company. I'm not really sure, but that doesn't nullify their findings. I understand that it means that we need to be more, careful of the details of it, but they still use a laboratory setting with normal scientific data, scientific equipment. So unless you can prove that they manipulated the data similar to the way the FDA has manipulated their data, then you'd have a reasonable argument to not take those arguments seriously. But they still have been able to show that, for example, the contamination by metals has been shown to be at trivial levels that pose no health risk. And the alarmists claim that such contaminations are based on unrealistic assumptions about the molecular form of these elements. That's something anyway, that's pretty much. This bill needs to be based on fact, and every time somebody comes up to talk about these studies, they're blatantly manipulating the data. And that's pretty easy to do. I've learned that as a psychology student. But that's
Thank you,
just not,
Ashley.
yeah.
Daniel?
Hi. First of all, these are some of my electronic cigarettes. These do not look like tobacco analog cigarettes. Just to be sure. I'll bring it a little personal here. 4 or 5 years ago, until I discovered electronic cigarettes, I smoked 3 packs a day for 40 years. That's a lot. I discovered electronic cigarettes. I didn't want to quit smoking. I enjoyed smoking. Smoking was my best friend. It just happened. You'll hear that story from other people as well who are in the audience who are long-time smokers. Do I care what kids smoke? Yes. But if they use an electronic cigarette and they're not smoking, it's much better for them through the decades. That is proven. There's no way that you can ingest particulate matter 100 times more volatile when it's burning than an electronic cigarette and tell me they're the same, they're equivalent. I have tried with many of my friends, some successfully, some not, to introduce them to electronic cigarettes. This past week, someone I've been speaking to for months encountered some of the same speeches that were made here today, some of the obfuscations, tergiversations, the garrulous arguing. There are facts. We have facts. They say, oh, there's a study that was published 4 years ago that has dangerous nitrosamines and My friend said, oh yeah, I just read an article. I have 3 electronic cigarettes at home. I'm not going to touch them because they're too dangerous. That's what this is going. Little kids will try cigarettes. They'll try skateboarding without helmets. They'll run into traffic. They'll do all of those things. Will they continue on smoking? No. The fact of the matter is smoking rates are going down. You're saying by introducing electronic cigarettes that they will become much more addicted. If they're addicted, if they are prone to addiction, they will become addicted, no matter what. But if they use electronic cigarettes, it will be much healthier for them. In addition, addiction in terms of nicotine is not so much a bad thing. It's not that dangerous compared to having a Starbucks every day with 400 or 500 calories in it and 3 times the level of caffeine that you have in a cup of tea. So I thank you. It's just leave us adults alone. We will work it out. We care for the kids. We don't want them to smoke for 40 years, 3 packs a day like I did. We are not the tobacco industry. We are not the purveyors. We're not the advocacy groups. We are the users. And we care. Several groups who...
Daniel?
Yes.
I like the suspenders, but, we're going to be consistent. Thank you very much for being here, for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Any questions?
No. Thank you. Thank you. Michael, Patrick, Phil, Danielle. And up next, Kareem Montes, Kona, I think that's